Good morning, and welcome to the Financial Optimist. And today I'm going to be talking about marriage and divorce from the perspective of personal finance. Because marriage is one of the largest commitments we make in life, it's very, very important you have the right kind of plan moving into it. So if you're someone that's not yet married and you're thinking about it, here are some things to think about. If you're someone that's already been married and you're thinking of a divorce, here's also some things to think about. But before you do anything in life, you got to have a plan. So let's dive right into it. So here at the Pew Research Center, it shows that out of all 40-year-olds out there, 25% of them have never been married, which means that by the time you're 40, you've got about a 75% chance of getting married. So that's something most people will eventually do at some point in their life. However, you look at the numbers here, back in 1980, only 6% of 40-year-olds were married, and you see it's been sharply increasing to 25%. So it's possible the number could keep rising, and maybe 10, 20 years from now, maybe half of all people at 40 will never be married. That's possible. But for right now, it's something the majority of people eventually do, and so because of that, it is worth talking about. And of course, if you're talking about, marriage, you also talk about the possibility of divorce, because unfortunately, that does happen sometimes. So here, for example, this website shows us the current divorce rate for first-time marriages is about 40 to 50%. So if you've never been married before and you get married, that's about a 1 in 2 chance of failure. So that's definitely a consideration. Before jumping into something as important as this, with a risk as high as this, you gotta know what you're doing. And of course, divorce is a type of risk which, if you chart it on the risk matrix, is a very, very bad type of risk, because it is both a very common type of risk, happens all the time, and when it does happen, it's very severe. As opposed to risks that happen very infrequently, and when they do happen, they're very minor. Divorce is the opposite. It's both common and severe, making it one of the worst types of risks out there, which is why you have to be so careful and do a lot of planning. But even then, if that's the first time divorce, you have to look at the average length of divorce is just 8 years. So you get married, 8 years later, get a divorce. That's unfortunately what the current status is here in the United States. And if you want to get remarried again, well, here it shows that second marriages have around a 60 to 67% chance of divorce for a second time. And for third marriages, it's over 70% of those marriages get divorced. So once you get married, you're better off sticking to your first partner, because if you want to divorce and try again with the second one, odds are it won't work out. You want to try with the third one, odds are it won't work out either. So trying to get to remarried is definitely not wise, and if you're thinking of marrying someone else who is themselves divorced, well, again, the risk of divorce is higher. So that's definitely something to consider there. Even if you've been married for decades and you have a lot of gray hair thinking I'm safe, our kids are grown up, well, the risk of gray divorce is actually on the rise. So unfortunately, even for the old timers out there, they're not safe from it. And when it comes to the cost of divorce, it can easily cost you up to $15,000 just for some of the court fees for actually filing the divorce and going through all the process and everything. And, when it comes to things like impact of children on divorce, 40% of all children are raised by divorced parents by the age of 18. 40%. So if someone's getting married because of the children, there's almost a 1 in 2 chance the children are still getting raised by divorced parents. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if you want to raise a family. And of course, religious and cultural differences. Obviously most religions encourage marriage and families, that kind of thing. That's pretty common with most beliefs. Cohabitation and divorce. This year shows that people who cohabitate before marriage are about 39% more likely to divorce. So that definitely is a very important factor. So before getting married, you got to look at some of the numbers and go, hey, what causes divorce? What can I do to avoid divorce before getting married? If you just blindly marry someone because you love them, that doesn't work anymore. This isn't some Hollywood movie. This isn't some Disney movie. You got to have a plan. You got to know what you're doing before getting married. And this is the kind of thing that trips up a lot of people. And prenuptial agreements, there's some mixed opinions on this. Do they help? Do they not help? So you get opinions on both sides, but, it really depends. But, let's say you're someone that decides, you're going to brave the risk. You're going to get married anyways. Well, there's a few benefits and drawbacks getting married. So this news article here says benefits can be like Social Security benefits, so basically retirement type stuff. Various types of tax breaks you get. You can save money on car insurance. You can save money on health insurance. You can potentially, save money when it comes to selling houses. There's other retirement benefits as well, and you can also save taxes on gifts. So basically, it says you can save money on taxes, save money on retirement, and save money on insurance as married. But you'll notice something peculiar when we look down here at the disadvantages of marriage. It says here, filing jointly can actually put you in a higher tax bracket. So on one hand, getting married can save you money in taxes, but can also cost you money in taxes. So looking at the types of tax you have to pay would be very, very important. Also, it could potentially raise your student loan payments. So, if you're someone with student debt, that's something to consider. If you're marrying someone who has a lot of debt, you now potentially are on the hook to pay off their debt. And it also says here you could pay more for car insurance. Even though it just said that getting married can lower your insurance, here it says it can also raise your insurance. So, a lot of the benefits can also be negatives here. And of course, if your spouse has bad credit, that can also negatively impact you. So if you're marrying someone with very bad credit score and you want to buy a house together, your interest rate may be higher because your spouse has bad credit. So in some regards, getting married can save you some money. In other regards, it can cost you some money. It depends on your specific life situation. But overall, it's not necessarily a clear winner here. The main problem is when you look at divorce, and you look at the cost of divorce and the likelihood of divorce, that's the kind of thing that really, really, really is a problem. And there is one more problem to consider, and that is divorce and suicide. So here it shows that once you divorce, you're 2.4 times more likely to kill yourself than someone who is married. So that's a huge consideration. And get this, divorced men are 9 times more likely to off themselves than divorced women. So that right there is very, very concerning, especially if you're a man thinking about getting married. It's literally the dangerous thing you can do. And so with that in mind, know what the risks are before getting married. I'm not saying don't get married, nor am I encouraging you to get married. That decision is 100% on you. I'm just saying before you do it, know what the risks are, know what you're getting yourself into. So with that said, let's talk about solutions. If you're someone that's gone through all this, you've done a lot of your own private research, and you've still decided you want to get married, what are some things you can do to help lower the risk of divorce? Well, like I said earlier, don't cohabitate before marriage. That's one thing you can do. But let's also look at this. Young adults under 25 who cohabitate back in 1970 was about 40%. Now it's down to about 7%. And cohabitation back then was far less than 1%, and now it's at almost 10%. So now we can see cohabitating partners is even more common than living with married couples for those under 25 years old. So we now see that cohabitating is more common than living with a married couple. But cohabitating before marriage increases the likelihood of divorce by 39%. So what's one thing you can do? Well, a lot of people stay cohabitating for many years and never get married, because if you never get married, you never get divorced. And if you're someone who's non-religious, that could be a solution. But if you're someone who is religious and your religion is encouraging you to get married and have children, that sort of things, well, what if there's a way to have your cake and eat it too? What if you find yourself a wife, find yourself a husband, and you have the big wedding ceremony, you say your vows, you have, the pastor, the priest, whatever have you have all the friends and guests, you have all the big ceremony, but then you never sign the paperwork. So legally, you're not married in the eyes of the government, but religiously, you are married in the eyes of your religion. That way, you can have the best of both worlds. You're not legally married, therefore, she can't divorce you. And on top of that, because you are religiously married, that means in the eyes of your God, in the eyes of your religion, you're good to go. So that way, you can potentially reduce the risk of divorce, because if you're not married, there's no chance of divorce. Yes, she may leave you, but keep in mind, the average marriage only lasts for 8 years anyways. So if you're living with your wife, unlicensed, and then she leaves you after 8 years, you're no better off, no worse off than if you had gone through divorce. But you save yourself all the court fees. You save yourself all kinds of divisions of assets. You save yourself a lot of alimony payments, that kind of thing. Especially if you're a man that, has some assets, a man of means. If you marry a woman, sometimes the woman gets to keep a large percentage of your assets in the divorce. Like this house here. I already got this house fully paid off. So if I ever decided to marry one day, I wouldn't want, some future ex-wife to take it from me. So I definitely would be very concerned that, if I marry someone, she might try to leave me and take the house away from me, and that's obviously not going to happen. So, from the perspective of a successful man, I have to look at this from a risk management perspective and go, okay, this is definitely a major risk. So signing the marriage license is a very dangerous thing to do because, let's face it, the marriage laws in the U.S. were written to encourage divorce. I mean, that's the bottom line. Marriage as it is in the U.S. from a legal perspective is a total failure. From a religious perspective, that's something a bit different. But if you really insist on signing the license, I'm going to have to say you just can't do it in the U.S. If you want to get married in the U.S., don't sign the paperwork. But if you do insist on signing the paperwork, you could always look at other countries. So here in the U.S., our divorce rate is 2.7 per 1,000. But what about over here in Mongolia? Their divorce rate is only 1 out of every 1,000. That's about a third of the divorce rate here in the U.S. Or about here in Sri Lanka, 0.15 out of 1,000. Divorce is almost unheard of over there. So if you're someone that is wanting to get married, and you want to make it official, you want to sign the paperwork and everything, there's a whole world of opportunities. If you leave the United States and go elsewhere, most countries have a lower divorce risk than the United States. And this is very, very powerful if you're someone that has a bit of money saved up, because the US dollar has a very favorable exchange rate with other countries. So if you can save a few $100,000, move to some other country, you could retire, live like a king, you could get married, find a local, get a passport, that sort of thing. You can live a great life in other countries. That's always an option. And if you want to stay in the United States, like I said, having an unlicensed marriage, you just cohabitate with your wife. You just don't sign the papers. That's the best way to do it here in the United States. And of course, there's all kinds of other tips and tricks and strategies. Some people talk about prenuptial agreements. If you're cohabitating, you can have a cohabitative contract, which is like a prenup without a marriage. There's all kinds of other things like that. But the purpose of this video is to inspire you to do your research about the types of risks you believe are most common and to develop strategies that are best for you. If you have any questions, drop below the comment section. I'd love to help you out. But with that said, thanks for watching and have a great day.